the Director of the Dream Keeper Initiative for San Francisco Human Rights Commission under the leadership of Dr. Cheryl Davis, who is here this evening. And we are really glad that you are joining us to learn a little bit more, about the Dream Keeper Initiative and the efforts that San Francisco is taking to move forward being an anti-racist government, to learn about our intentionality behind evaluating our progress in what Dr. Melody mentioned earlier, implementing a corrective narrative as opposed to a counter one. And I appreciate that framing. And just so that we can ground folks in what the Dream Keeper Initiative is in San Francisco, I will take us back to summer of 2020 when George Floyd was murdered at the hands of police. And cities and countries and corporations stood in solidarity with the Black community and pledged resources to Black folks in the name of Black Lives Matter. And in that moment, San Francisco responded. San Francisco's mayor, London Breed, as well as then President of the Board, Supervisor Walton, and Director Davis at the San Francisco Human Rights Commission committed $120 million to Black people, Black communities in San Francisco. It has since been annualized to $60 million a year to go towards creating an environment where diverse San Franciscans, Black San Franciscans can experience prosperity, liberation, and can imagine a future in that city. And we make intentional investments in ensuring that families and individuals alike can experience joy and feelings of safety, can advance educationally and economically, and can experience holistic health as well as thrive. And so what you're going to hear more about this evening is a partnership that we in government embarked on. Earlier this afternoon, we heard from members of the university, which is one of the DKI-funded programs and efforts, the Jamuia Research Institute, and they shared about conducting research and evaluation through an Africological lens to lead to a more equitable research practice, as well as to correct narratives. And we're now going to go a little bit deeper. And so that partnership with Jamuia Research Institute was married or coupled with HRNA, a mission-based research firm, and they offered an opportunity for government to go deeper and to think about how we actually turn racial equity plans into racial equity action. And they will share some of the findings of that research and evaluation work, as well as some recommendations for San Francisco as a municipality to be very intentional about moving toward an anti-racist local government. And so with that, I'm going to bring up our partners, Sarah Fleming, Sarah Simone, and Jose Serrano McLean, who will go through what we learned as a part of that 2-year evaluation. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah Solon. I want to start by thanking Dr. Sai so much for the opportunity to be with all of you here today. I'm Sarah. My partners, Derek and Jose. And as Dr. Sai said, we are from HRNA Advisors, which is an mission-driven, employee-owned public policy consulting firm. And our bread and butter is to work with cities around the country to advance projects that center racial justice, or racial equity and economic justice. And we think that there is something different, something uniquely effective about the Dream Keeper Initiative. For the past 2 years, we've had the honor of supporting the Human Rights Commission's leadership of the Dream Keeper Initiative. And we're excited to share with you today why we think this initiative is uniquely effective and what other cities can learn from it. We're going to talk for about 30 minutes at the beginning of this session. And then we want to invite the real stars of the show, Dr. Sai, Dr. Davis, Drs. Lucky and Medley, to join us on stage so that we can all have a conversation about what we've learned here and how we can apply it elsewhere. So as I said, I want to start by just talking a little bit about our project. So the Human Rights Commission asked independent researchers to explore the impact of the Dreamkeeper Initiative in its first 2 years, and to develop a series of recommendations to strengthen and sustain this initiative in the years to come. The research partners included Drs. Manley and Lucky from the Jamuya Research Institute, who we had the pleasure of hearing from a little bit earlier today, and the team that you see on this stage. We had 3 primary areas of inquiry in this research project. The first was community accountability. In the first 2 years of the Dreamkeeper Initiative, has it remained accountable to community needs and desires? The second is trust. Are the city departments implementing the Dreamkeeper Initiative beginning to shift how the city partners with Black-led and Black-serving organizations? And do grantees see these changes in city practices as a way of beginning to repair trust between government and the communities that it has marginalized? Third, is DKI addressing structural racism? Are DKI programs seen by community members and grantees as reparative, meaning they directly address historical government harm and divestment? And are they proactive, meaning that they support building a better future? Our methodology was pretty extensive. Our findings, analysis, and recommendations are informed by narratives and impact reports from the 8 city departments that have been part of implementing the Dreamkeeper Initiative. We conducted surveys of and interviews with 40 city employees across these 8 departments. We surveyed 50 Black-led and Black-serving DKI grantee organizations, and our partners with the Jamuya Research Institute had held a series of focus groups with grantees, in which 34 different grantees participated. There was also a series of community focus groups that were facilitated by the Jamuya Research Institute, in which over 70 community members, who are the intended beneficiaries of Dreamkeeper Initiative programs and services, participated. Our overarching finding is that following decades of divestment, being Black in San Francisco determines how you live, whether you live, where you live, your safety, the quality of your education, the quality of the air you breathe, your health, your economic opportunity, and your likelihood of being displaced or arrested. Yet, Black joy, creativity, invention, and community persist. Through the Dreamkeeper Initiative, San Francisco city government is incubating a new model for local government action, partnership, and accountability that we believe can become a replicable blueprint for anti-racist local government that centers the needs and dreams of San Francisco's diverse Black populations. I want to invite my colleague Derek to walk you through some more of our findings.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So I'm really here to talk to you more granularly about the amazing impact and findings that came out of the hard, thoughtful, courageous work that the city of San Francisco decided to undertake on behalf of Black San Franciscans. So we really want to, display to you what conscientious, intentional policy looks like when done in a coordinated and organized way. And so we're excited to share these findings with you. The level of community impact for Black San Franciscans has been incredible because of DKI. Some of the highlights that we can point to is really looking at economic empowerment that's happened because of DKI. Over 280 Black entrepreneurs have been supported and funded and scaffolded because of. Yes, so that they can see it. Oh, sorry, I was pushing the wrong button. No, it's all right. Sorry about that. So which button am I supposed to push here?
Yeah, you can press the button for us.
That one.
Yeah, you can press this one. This is what we see on the screen.
I'm old school, I was pressing up and down. So as I was saying, 280 Black San Franciscans as entrepreneurs have been supported through DKI and supported with capital funding from this initiative. And another 200 businesses were launched as a result of the work of DKI. 34 of those businesses were actually new brick and mortar storefronts that that weren't there before. That we could see 17 of which were part of the Fillmore District, historic Black district, economic district in San Francisco that now people can point to, can patronize, has new employees and new services and goods that represent the Black diaspora in San Francisco because of DKI. The workforce, as a result of the DKI initiative, has also been impacted in an incredible way. Hundreds of new employees have been put to work in jobs that are paying, 200% more than the living minimum wage, in jobs that are viable, that become living wage jobs in San Francisco. That is now happening as a result of DKI, and we'll talk a little bit more about housing, specifically how DKI has supported new homeowners Black homeowners in San Francisco. But as I highlight, 22 new individuals in San Francisco are homeowners because of this initiative. So when we talk about gaps, and we talk about cities that really exemplify inequity, and how particularly Black communities are disenfranchised, marginalized, and not included, closing those gaps and being purposeful and intentional about it is all in the work. And so with DKI, through work with all the grantees and community-based organizations, has really made an effort to make sure that this inclusionary work, reparative work, is about closing those gaps. So when we talk to the grantees, the recipients of the funds at DKI, we asked them about, how has this initiative over the past 2 years really impacted your work and the way that you come together and connect with the community. Over 90% of these grantees said that if it were not for DKI, our work, the work that we do as an organization, would not be possible. And every single one of the grantees that were engaged and a part of this initiative, all of them said that DKI has really been a source of addressing the underinvestment of Black San Franciscans, that if not for DKI, those needs would still go unmet. So it's clear that the consensus around people who are doing the work in San Francisco, who are involved and on the ground, are realizing the fruits and the promise of this program. So now I want to touch on some real specific areas and some of the initiatives, the real pivot points and positions that DKI, as Dr. Sai said earlier, really the foundational actions that the city decided to focus on when addressing some of the inequity for Black San Franciscans. And these specific areas within the initiative are really about addressing inequity in a holistic way. You sometimes see organizations that choose one area to focus on, and that area becomes, a real sort of way that you can look at the results and the fruits of that investment. But DKI is taking an approach that really holistically addresses some of the issues of inequity and lack of inclusion. So those areas that DKI is making an impact in are in arts and culture, health and wellness, holistic family services, so youth, young adults and their families, home ownership for Black San Franciscans, mini grants that can be used to support economic endeavors in San Francisco, and specific economic upward mobility for entrepreneurs in San Francisco. So these are the areas where DKI is really focusing on a holistic approach for Black San Franciscans. Specifically on arts and culture, we work with our grantees to really look at some of the results of the investment in the arts and culture space. And what we found was that 126 new experiences, events, performances, and programs had taken place that represent the Black cultural experience in San Francisco had taken place because of DKI. These new artists and performers were able to perform and engage with 15,000 participants, some San Franciscans, some tourists, but all together were able to represent the rainbow, the diaspora, the texture, the layers of what San Francisco is in terms of its cultural experiences. A new studio album was produced by a San Franciscan because of the support and funding of this arts and culture DKI initiative. And so what we know is cities that represent the best and the fullness of every single person that is a resident of that city. Really the only way to see and exemplify that is when the arts and culture are alive and present up front, representing all of that community, of that city. And so the fact that Black San Franciscans now have a vehicle to lift up their art, their song, their writing, their visual art, all because of DKI. When it comes to youth and families, the Brighter Futures initiative has been, again, incredibly impactful via the DKI initiative. Nearly 1,000 children, youth, and transitional age youth and their families have been supported through mental health, leadership programs, career development, financial resourcing, housing, and community building. There's a number of grantees that we spoke with that were very clear that the Black youth in San Francisco fall through cracks because of the lack of support and agencies that can be there to address some of the fall through areas. And DKI has made through Brighter Futures an opportunity to impact over 1,000 children through this initiative. When it comes to economic mobility, I spoke a little bit about the entrepreneurs, the 280 entrepreneurs that have been supported and scaffolded because of DKI. But another point that I wanted to address in terms of the economic mobility and the entrepreneurship that DKI has made way for has been for the family child care and licensed Black daycare workers and entrepreneurs who take care of the youth and kids in San Francisco. Over 9 new licensed businesses have come about because of the DKI initiative, and 22 businesses are on their way for certification and licensing. And these are practitioners, these are educators, these are entrepreneurs that are providing services for families, for people to be able to go to work, but also creating space and wholesome environments for kids that need it. Regarding the health and wellness area, DKI is really about helping families that are experiencing extreme circumstances. And it finds ways of addressing dislocation, non-connectedness, through looking for areas to support these families. The areas of professional development, public health, preventative care, these are all areas that DKI works to address through its health and wellness initiative. Again, I've spoken a bit about home ownership and the 22 families that have now been able to be enfranchised and have equity in what we call San Francisco. It's important to know that San Francisco is really one of the more competitive, expensive, difficult areas to become enfranchised as a homeowner. And, because of the work of MOCD, which is the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development, and its work with DKI, over 785 households have been touched, counseled, and reached out to in regards to support for becoming new homeowners. The down payment assistance loan program has 116 active applicants that are in a pipeline to one day become homeowners in San Francisco. Now, this is in comparison to prior to DKI, in the last 5 years, where only 111 homeowners, 5 of them who were identified as Black, were a part of this enfranchisement and homeownership. So you can see that there's been a 380% increase in the level of Black home ownership because of the DKI initiative, which is huge in cities, particularly looks like San Francisco. So the wealth building that's happening, not only because of the homeowners initiative, but grants that go to help with people in their homes and seniors who are able to address issues of repair with their homes. This is also a big part. Over 7 applicants from the Seniors Homeowners Program have received approval and support from the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development. So we're very excited to be able to, over these 2 years, be able to cite these significant, substantial, tangible findings because of the intentional work and investment that has come through the DKI initiative. So I want to turn it over now to my colleague Jose, who's going to talk to you about the agency engagement with DKI.
Hey, thank you for having us, Dr. Sai, Dr. Davis. This has been an honor to be a part of the Dreamkeeper Initiative to support the research and evaluation of impact of this initiative. So our partnership with the Juvenile Research Institute, we have really learned so much, and it's changed everything for us in terms of how we think about how to assess the impact of programs that are supposed to impact communities. So thank you for your partnership. So what I'm here to share with you all today is why this initiative that you've been hearing about has ended up becoming a kind of laboratory for how a city government goes from, as you said, Dr. Saleh, from having racial equity action plans to actually taking racial equity action. In other words, to make a meaningful shift to be an anti-racist local government. And so what we have sort of tried to take away from this process is what has made the difference. What might be the so-called blueprint for an anti-racist local government that could be replicated in cities across the country, which is why we're here in Chicago today. All right, so we have our blueprint breaks that into six parts. The first one is that cities need to enact real ongoing community accountability and partnership. With the DKI program, from conception to implementation, there was a real significant glue on around community accountability. Before anything, came a significant effort to actually listen to Black communities to decide how to invest the first $120 million. And the Human Rights Commission conducted over 60 community meetings, many invited actual community coalitions to the table to have their, to share their know-how of what works in the community. And according to 50 Dreamkeeper Initiative grantees, i.e. Black-led and Black-serving organizations who were engaged in this research process, half of the ones that we talked to were actually part of that initial community engagement and helped to shape the Dreamkeeper Initiative from the ground forward. This to us feels like a shift of a city government realizing that when you intend to partner with organizations, co-designing those partnerships makes all the difference. Nearly all 50 grantees and every single government employee that we engaged agreed that this was the first thing that set the Dreamkeeper initiative apart from other initiatives in city governments. And that they want to see this approach replicated throughout San Francisco city governments. The second piece of the blueprint is providing dedicated funding and that is reparative and proactive. So in the research that we conducted, both the partner organizations, i.e. the grantees, and the city employees supporting this initiative shared with us that they see the Dreamkeeper initiative as a reparative effort that addresses the challenges that the city's diverse Black populations have faced over the past 50 years. And in addition to seeing the work as reparative, the Black-led organizations that were engaged also see that the funding really addressed gaps as Derek shared. Overwhelmingly, these organizations reported that the funding allowed them to provide a service to the communities that they would not otherwise have been able to do. This points to the success of those initial engagements that really helped to shape what the blueprint for the Dreamkeeper initiative would become. The third part of the blueprint is to encourage city employees to disperse funding and programming with trust. Now, this is at the core of what I think really is the secret and magic ingredient of the Dreamkeeper initiative, is that there were intentional efforts to shift the experiences that Black-led, particularly Black-led grassroots organizations have in contracting with city governments. Some of the city departments that made contracts were really focused on making those contracts flexible so that grantees can determine how to adjust their objectives and approach to best meet community needs. This is really a stark difference from how city governments typically engage with nonprofit organizations that they contract with, and this is across the country. You know, usually local governments really creates very rigid templates for how nonprofits and other partners in the community are going to execute services in those communities. And in this case, the city departments partnered with the Black-led organizations really were focused on minimizing the burden that these organizations have in contracting with city government. And in many cases, it was really intentional about making sure that those organizations were defining success on their own terms. And they were providing support. I know Zena was involved in this project, really designing research and evaluation methodologies to define their own success. So there was technical assistance provided for those organizations to really be able to determine what they're going to report as successes to the grantor, right, to city government. So these more flexible approaches was really one of the things that defined this sort of trust-based partnership that city government started enacting through the Dreamkeeper initiative with this cohort of initial grantees. The fourth component of what we see as this blueprint is really the need to make bold investments that really reflect the scope and the severity of structural racism. First of all, the sum was really significant. $120 million as an initial commitment for 2 years was really a signal to the Black community that it was time to do something bolder than they had seen from their government representatives. Like the grantees, the city employees that were engaged in this initiative universally viewed the Dreamkeeper initiative as a really solid public investment. And you just heard from my colleague Derek about how much of that impact was really felt in the community and how much services and sort of diverse creative services came out of this program that directly impacted communities. What we heard in our research was really resounding agreement that the Dreamkeeper initiative's funding and and programs are addressing issues of structural racism. According to one grantee, and I'll put this in their own words, the Dreamkeeper Initiative has renewed hope among Black and Brown business owners, educators, nonprofit organizations, and artists. Because of the Dreamkeeper Initiative, we are starting to open the doors for dreams again, especially coming out of COVID-19. We see the shift, and our morale is being built and lifted. The fifth component of this anti-racist blueprint is really to leverage public funding to build opportunity for Black and Black-led serving organizations. So in the lead up to building the DKI, the Human Rights Commission had heard about the sort of numerous comments that participants had made in the meetings, expressing frustration with the tone and tenor of system leaders in city governments. Many nonprofits noted that they were denied grant funding because they had, this is previous to the Dreamkeeper Initiative, were denied grant funding because they lacked the quote-unquote capacity and weren't trusted to do the work. What we found in our research is that the DKI initiative is really beginning to impact this narrative and creating new opportunities for Black-led and Black-serving organizations to secure public funding. The vast majority, 90% of grantees that were surveyed, reported that the initiative is really facilitating how those organizations can contract with city government as compared to with other city programs. And overwhelmingly, the city employees that we engaged and surveyed reported that the Dreamkeeper Initiative is really making it easier for Black-led and Black-serving organizations to access city resources. The sixth piece of the sort of magic sauce of the Dreamkeeper Initiative, as we saw it, is that it's an initiative that's beginning to influence other practices within city government. So there were 8 departments that were the recipients of Dreamkeeper Initiative funds, but San Francisco city government is more than 8 departments. And even within each of those 8 departments, there was really a sense that the teams that were working on Dreamkeeper Initiative programs and services and activities were really beginning to sort of inform how other employees and colleagues were understanding the impact of these kinds of initiatives. So the broader integration into city government could be seen, for example, as in the way that other parts of government were looking to are looking to award funding to support community-based organizations and how they were learning about how DKI approached the work of community engagement and how they're approaching the work of staff development and support for DKI-funded employees within city government. The vast majority of city employees that we surveyed reported that the initiatives, programs, and approach are strengthening work within their own departments. And city employees shared that in the coming years, they hope to see the Human Rights Commission strengthen cross-agency collaboration, for example, by developing model contracts, data collection tools, and other tools that can support trust-based grant making within other parts of city government. So that to us represents the ways in which this particular initiative went from being a really serious grant-making organization to Black-led and Black-serving organizations in San Francisco, to also being a kind of internal change maker within San Francisco city government. And we are hoping to see more of that growth in the coming years. I'm going to pass it to my colleague Sarah to share a few other recommendations that we see going forward.
Thank you, Jose. Okay, we have one final slide before we ask Drs. Lucky and Nunley and Sai back up to the stage, so just get ready. So the final part of our project is thinking about what are some ways that the Dreamkeeper Initiative can strengthen and sustain this phenomenal progress that they have had over the last 2 years. Our recommendations boil down to 3 things. First, support your people. So we are recommending that the Dreamkeeper Initiative prioritize investments in DKI programs and services to ensure that everybody who is implementing the Dreamkeeper initiative is able to earn a family-sustaining wage. We also know that it is very difficult to do change-making work within government. It can be lonely, it can be re-traumatizing, and so we are suggesting deeper support for city government employees who are implementing this work. The second recommendation is to go deeper on economic justice. So the Dreamkeeper initiative has already had pretty phenomenal success in terms of implementing guaranteed income, supporting homeownership, and supporting entrepreneurs. And we're suggesting bolder investment in these three areas in the coming years. And the third thing is to leverage the Dreamkeeper initiative to inform other parts of city government. So the power of the Dreamkeeper initiative is not in any way limited to the $60 million a year that are invested in the new services and programs. Its power is also in incubating new ways for government to actually listen to, partner with, and lift up the communities that for so long have been marginalized by government. And so we're recommending that DKI develop and deliver a series of skill-building, anti-racist local government practices for all city employees who are doing programmatic procurement and grantee work across any kind of program in order to better center the needs of Blacks and Franciscans. So, thank you for listening to that overview of our presentation. And yes, this is the start of the show. Please join us on stage so we can ask you some questions about how you did it.